Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our October 23rd City Council meeting. We will rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, and then we have our invocation this evening by Mike Linville, who is a pastor with the Eagle Creek Friends Church.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let us bow. Our Lord and our God, he who sits high in the heavens above all authority, we pray, Lord, that you would be gracious to us today. Bless us, I pray, Lord, cause your face to shine upon us. Help us to be strong, but help us to be peaceful. Help us to be just, but help us to be merciful. Help us, Lord, to be prosperous, but be generous. Make us a beacon of freedom and blessing and righteousness in this community. Help us, Lord, to cause this community to be a haven of rest and hope. And I pray, Lord, that you would grant this council the wisdom to make your dreams their dreams. Make your dreams come true for this community and this city. We pray these things in the lovely name of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen. Amen. Honorable Mayor and members of the council, may God's blessing descend upon you and may his wisdom overpower. Amen.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Johns, would you like to conduct the meeting?
Thank you, Mayor Cook. Yes. Marla, would you please note the presence of a quorum?
Troy Patton.
Here.
Mike Johns.
Here.
Scott Fry.
Here.
Cindy Spoljarek. Here. Scott Willis.
Here.
Victor McCarty.
Here.
Jake Gilbert.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. There are no changes to tonight's agenda. It is as presented. The first item on the agenda will be the approval of the minutes from our October 9th, 2023 meeting. Councilors, do I have any questions or to those minutes? Can I then have a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made by Councilor McCarty, seconded by Councilor Willis. Would you call the roll, please, Marla?
Scott Willis.
Yes.
Victor McCarty.
Yes.
Mike Johns.
Yes.
Scott Fry.
Yes.
Cindy Spoljarek.
Yes.
Jake Gilbert.
Yes.
Troy Patton.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Okay, great. Our next item is the approval of the claims docket for this evening, October 23rd, 2023. Councilors, do we have any questions regarding the claims docket this evening? Can I have a motion then regarding the
Motion to approve.
Do you have a second?
I'll second.
Motion made by Councilor Patton, seconded by Councilor Willis. Marla, call the roll, please.
Victor McCarty.
Yes.
Mike Johns.
Yes.
Scott Fry.
Yes.
Cindy Spoljarek.
Yes.
Jake Gilbert.
Yes.
Troy Patton.
Yes.
Scott Willis.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you. With respect to any special presentations tonight, we have none. So we'll move right into the old business category. First item of old business will be ordinance 23-27, the Grand Junction Plaza approving a lease between the City of Westfield, RDA, and RDC, pledging certified share revenue to the RDC, approving RDA bonds, approving the transfer of certain property from the city to the RDA, and all matters related thereto. And John Rogers is going to explain this item to us. John.
Good evening, John Rogers with the Mayor's Office. Tonight you have before you ordinance 2327. This is around Grand Junction Plaza. On the line I have Jim Crawford, who can answer any questions you have on this particular ordinance.
Jim, it's Mike Johns. I do have a question. I had received a message that there was to be a map attached to this ordinance, and you were working on that. Is that?
I can answer that. That we are working on that map. It should be complete sometime next week, probably Thursday of next week. It was a special request from a member of the RDC, and we said we could get it attached, but it won't be done until Thursday. It shouldn't affect this.
What's the map for?
It's a map of all the plats that make up Grand Junction Plaza right now.
The legal description for the plaza is attached to the ordinance as Exhibit A, and the map just shows the perimeter of that legal description. When it's prepared, it's what it'll show.
Any other counselor comments?
Just so we can clarify, this is lit and not TIF, but it is the intention to use TIF cash to buy
That
it
is
now?
correct.
But that's not written anywhere?
That is correct.
Cindy, we can't do that, otherwise we'd be pledging TIF, and we don't want to do that because that'll start the clock running on the ability to have obligations entered into against that TIF. So what will happen is every lease payment date, the trustee will determine if there is sufficient TIF in that account to make that payment. And if so, there's no lit that will be transferred. If for some reason the TIF is less than what is necessary for that payment, then the difference will be made up by lit.
So it's only going to use lit if there's no funds?
That is correct.
Correct. And legally, the bondholders will only be able to look to lit.
Where is that memorialized? Where is that? How can we make sure that that's exactly the way that it's going to be operated?
I would lean on Jim's explanation that he just gave you, but the lit is the pledged dollars for this activity.
Yeah, but it doesn't say what he was saying, even in the next one on 2328. And I'm sorry if that's,
No, and I apologize. This item does require a public hearing. So I'm going to ask all the counselors to hold your comments for a second and think about what else you'd like to ask. And let's open the floor to a public hearing. And we will open this hearing effective at 7:08. And let's give it about a minute or so. And Kevin, do we have any comments or calls yet this one? Okay, thank you. Okay, we will close our public hearing then at 7:09 and open the floor back up to councilor comments and questions.
I'm on 2328.
Councilor Patton?
Okay, just, sorry, because I just want to be clear. So it doesn't say that, I'm not an attorney, so, obviously. But it doesn't say that the lit revenues will not be used even if there are TIF dollars to pay for it. Manny, I mean, I don't, not to, I'm staring at you. So it doesn't say that in the ordinance. So, yeah, yeah,
And then if not,
yeah.
Jim can talk about that.
Is Jim Treat on? Okay, go ahead, Mr. Crawford.
I was going to say that there are three obligations that are outstanding currently that have lit being used. 2016, 2018, and 2022 bonds. And Jim Treat has run the numbers, and if you take into account all of the debt service payments on those three, plus the debt service payment on this bond, if lit was used, there is more than ample coverage to meet those obligations. Jim can kind of give you some numbers on that.
Yes, and council, this is the exact same structure that you've used for the primary financing of Graham Park as well, where we just pledged lit because that was the strongest security for getting the best rate on our bonds. But we always had the intention of using TIF, but by not legally pledging it in an ordinance like this, you avoid starting the 25-year clock on the Grand Junction TIF area. That's really the reason we've done it like that, to preserve that TIF cash flow. So, and as we've shown in the past, we have transitioned those other leases over to TIF sources, and that is the plan for this one as well. But as far as coverage, you only need to show 1.25 coverage. So that's your lit right now is over $24 million for 2023 with the supplement on the regular coverage. And right now you have about $4.5 million in existing bonds that have pledges. Again, none of them are being used, are being paid with lit, but the pledges are there. So um, even if you add in, we're estimating about a $2.1 million annual lease payment for this, the new lease. So that is about $6.7 million when all four leases are outstanding. And that's almost 4 times coverage. So you have plenty of room. Again, this is strictly as a security pledge, not to use the funds, which we've shown in the past we can do that. And we have other needs in the budget. Well, I don't do the budget, but you do, for lit. And this is not one of the budgeted uses. It's just intended as security. So that's the reason we do it like that.
Jim, this is Troy. Just real quick,
Yeah, Troy.
beyond that, I mean, what's the negative of starting the TIF? I mean, if we actually truly are starting TIF districts with the ability to pay back a certain amount of money, and at the end of that period of time that they're supposed to run out, and then that money is supposed to revert back, what's the downside of starting that
The
25-year clock?
downside is, yeah, there are other projects that are likely going to come up that none of us know about right now. And that's a very strong cash flow of funds to be able to do those road projects or what of those projects might be. So yes, they will be set up to be able to cover the projects we've identified or the obligations we've incurred to date. But as I think has been shown and will be shown as more planning goes forward on all the infrastructure and other needs of the city, there's a pretty big stream of needs, and so that's very routine planning in the cities that I work with that have a strong TIF stream to try to preserve that as long as possible.
Sorry, can I ask you another question? So,
Sure.
so with Grand Park, you said we did the same thing. Did we use any lit dollars in Grand Park?
We did early on, yes. And I don't have the exact years, Troy, but there were years where we used it, and then we gradually transitioned it out of general fund into TIF.
So if we did that, and, you know, I mean, please correct me if I'm wrong, why wouldn't we have taken that money that we used for lit and then give that back to the budget and refunded the general funds or
Because
whatever?
it's not really an allowed use of the TIF. We can use it for economic development projects, things like that, and the payback debt for those things, but it wouldn't be, you can't just put it back into the general fund for operations or anything like that because of the restrictions on use of TIF.
But if it was an amount owed, like, just like we had the $6 million from the RDC paid back to the city.
I don't think that was TIF, though. I think that was operating funds from Grand Park. Net operating
right?
results.
Yeah, that's how we were able to do it, because we had cash on hand from operations.
My personal opinion is I hate giving government any flexibility to use money any way they want, because it never comes back to the place it really should have been to begin with.
And
I mean,
In all fairness, if I may jump in here just very quickly with a thought, Troy, Counselor Patton, the explanation.
Troy's fine.
And I appreciate the explanation, but even in the explanation, you've outlined really what the big concern is, and that is we don't know what projects those TIF dollars might be able to be used for down the road because of projects we're not aware of.
Right.
That's exactly the thing that we're trying to prevent. The TIF dollars are supposed to be there for this, not for something that's unknown at this point in time. That's my concern.
Right.
If we vote this down, we can come back with another ordinance that backs this and pays for it out of TIF and leaves lit out of the equation?
I would not recommend that, sir, because we need the lit as security for the bond market. We've already gone to the market for a rating, and the rating is based on the lit security, so we really cannot do this and leave lit out of the equation.
So the rating and rate we're going to get, if we back it with our current TIF, is not strong enough to get the rating we're looking for?
Well, it's not the transaction that the underwriter or anybody's been looking at, so no, I don't think so. He's not on the phone tonight, but I would not recommend that at all.
So
And the rating is based on based on your lit history and your lit availability. It's not based on potential TIF that might be used for it. So it wouldn't even address that.
Manny, what would generate operating funds to be able to pay that money back from lit in this TIF? Can you give me some ideas or yeah, I mean, that would be able to be paid back?
Operating revenue, from rentals and leases and user agreements and things of that nature. So we're uniquely situated to have been able to do that previously because we have that recurring revenue of operating funds.
But if we have like a skating rink and things like that that generate,
Yeah, user fees from that might be able to, would be operating funds. that
or
would be-
rental of the pavilion, I mean,
Sure, because that was part of it. Rental of the pavilion was used
yeah,
as part of the $6 million that was paid back
yeah.
last year. So
And I apologize, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Scott, but I mean, I'm just trying to figure out a way to say, okay, hey, look, I'm for it, but I mean, those monies have to be paid back if they use any lit proceeds, whether it be through any operating revenues that possibly even come through Grand Junction, because those monies, I would think also you'd want them in the general fund for the, Scott Willis, I mean, for the next side, because then you guys can use them for other things. Otherwise, they're going to be subject to only that TIF district.
Yeah, but I definitely want to preserve that TIF district for the projects we've got coming up. We've got some, as you know from being on the committee, we've got some substantial investments coming that's going to greatly benefit Grant Park, and we're going to need that to activate that.
So let me ask this, Manny. Does it create any sort of legal issue? Let's say we were to approve this at, as it stands. Is there anything preventing us from then drafting a resolution or an ordinance, resolution that would indicate that if there are TIF, when the TIF funds accumulate and the account has the balance available to make those payments come from here and not to anything else until this is paid down?
let me make sure I understand the question. You're saying if you pass this as it stands, then you would want to pass a resolution that says if if lit funds are used here, you would want an equal amount of that paid from operations?
Not necessarily, because I understand that there's gonna be a while until we get the funds, right? So there will be some expense here. But what I don't wanna do is have a TIF out there accumulating these funds that then go to a project, as described earlier in this conversation, that we don't even imagine yet, something that we're unaware of or have not.
The city council has no control over.
Correct.
So that's, and Jim can speak to it too, that's a legal impossibility for TIF funds that are raised and are available to not have passed council muster with an EDA approved already for use in a subsequent project. I know some folks don't like the fact that the EDAs are set up with plans that are broad, but usually those plans, when they're set up, are broad enough and broad for a reason to encompass things like infrastructure and things that we know are generally approvable uses of TIF funds, but are not necessarily things we know are coming down the pike in a year or two, maybe 5-10 years, and that's when you start the 25-year clock Jim were talking about. So is there anything stopping you from passing such a resolution? No. It would just be kind of adding to the legal landscape already, saying, yes, we recognize that this is, I want to remind everybody that this is the obligation we're under to follow the plan that was passed in establishing the EDA. Jim, you want to add to that?
Well, yeah, I just wanted to point out one thing that it different than what I had mentioned before when Councilor Patton asked me, had we used some lit early on in these other leases? Yes, we did, but we were at a much different place, Councilor, in our creation of TIF cash flows. So this is not one where we're doing it with lit and then we're hoping that in a few years or 5 years or something that we will be able to cash flow it with TIF. No, we've already identified those existing TIF sources and have every expectation that those will be more than sufficient to make the payments. So it is truly a pledge of the strongest security for a large financing like this that the city can provide. It's not an intent to skirt around and use that lit for this strictly to save TIF for some other purpose.
If that's strong,
That
that's probably all the
saving the
more reason to,
TIF, well,
that's probably all the more reason then to have the money paid back to the city. Anyways.
okay.
I would like to see it rewritten to say that the lit would be paid back from operating funds, that those monies would be paid back, whether it be from the skating rink or pavilion rental or whatever. Because there's no sense in continuing to put money into TIF and have them be, and I'm not saying Scott Willis is doing this, I'm saying then to later have them be abused and the money used incorrectly. Or without any oversight.
I mean, if a TIF runs out in 25 years, you can approve a new EDA when that one's done, right? Manny?
Sorry, say that again.
The point is in doing is to extend the TIF and be able to extend the TIF and not put it on the clock but, I mean, even if the TIF for this purpose runs out in 25 years from now, they could create a new TIF or a new EDA for those purposes,
Not
right?
unless they change the rule. Not unless they change the rules, because when you create a new TIF for that same property, all the current value goes into base.
Yeah.
So you'd have to build all new improvements to create any new increment in that new time frame.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Just like when council votes to approve something for 25 years, the expectation was it was for it was approved for. And now it's like, well, we really want it to be able to be around for flexibility, which I can appreciate with the growth and Scott's comments, but at the same time, it's like, well, this was approved for this reason.
Well, if I can, we've done this several times through the years, but the wording of this, and I think Jim Crawford will back me up, is that he has worded this so that we can go out and secure the best rate on the market. And of course, that's not easy today, and that's why he's written it this way. As all the bonds we do, we are very sensitive to what the rates are in the market. If we do addendums, if we wait, put it off, it's going to hurt our rate.
They can have the better rating, but money has to be paid back.
Yeah, so like to get the better rate, Mayor, I'm in favor. The point of just, if we did use lit, that it would be repaid. That's, I don't know if there's a way.
Jim Treat, could you repeat the analysis you did on what the first payments are expected to come from?
Yeah, I mean, we have existing cash flows from probably mostly it'll come from Grand Junction and East Side TIF. But we have the existing you have the existing cash flows to enable to make the payments. Short of some catastrophic event, financial or economic, we are confident that you have those cash flows, and it's not going to be a need for a reimbursement resolution or whatever you want to call it, a reimbursement clause. I don't know if we can do that anyway. I'm not the attorney here, but
Well, I think also, I can speak for Mayor-elect Willis, you're not going to want to use lit dollars. You're going to do everything you can to use the TIF dollars.
yeah,
Because
right.
the lit dollars are part of your budget that can be used for operations, et cetera. So you are highly motivated to use lit dollars.
Absolutely. And we talked about this with the whole GEO bond strategy. We've got an operations fund shortage coming up. We don't want to use lit dollars for this stuff. Again, we can't predict the future, but I feel confident in the analysis they've done. I think it's the best long-term strategy for the city. It gives us flexibility, and it gives us the best bond rating. And to me, this is the way we need to go.
Any other comments, questions?
Just last comment. According to what Jim said, we did use some lit dollars for Grand Park, and even though that had a better structure and whatever, and there were dollars there, that didn't get paid back. And if truly the intention is to do that, then why wasn't that done? I mean,
Now, I come back with that, because you're not, why did we do it at Grand Park? Because that was the plan from the day one. Because the Grand Park TIF district, when we built Grand Park, it didn't have anything in it. And we knew, and it was discussed, that we would be using lit dollars until the day that we can totally use TIF dollars. That is not the plan here. So it was the plan there. You understand?
Any other questions, comments? Do I have a motion on ordinance 2327?
I'll make a motion to approve 23-27.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Motion made by Counselor Willis, seconded by Counselor Spiljerik. Marla, would you call the roll, please?
Jake Gilbert,
Yes.
Troy Patton,
no, in its current form.
Scott Willis,
Yes.
Victor McCarty,
Yes.
Mike Johns,
Yes.
Scott Fry,
Yes.
Cindy Spiljerik.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-1.
Thank you.
Our Our next item this evening is ordinance 2328, authorizing the additional appropriation from the proceeds of the City Development Authority local income tax lease rental revenue bonds, Series 2023 Grand Junction Plaza. This item had a council introduction on October 9th and requires a public hearing this evening. And again, and then we'll have adoption consideration following that. John, would you give us a quick overview before the public hearing?
I will let Mr. Crawford do that, please.
This is a pretty straightforward ordinance. It appropriates the funds that the city will receive for transfer of the property to the RDA, and it will enable the city then to pay off the outstanding bans, which come due April the 1st of next year.
With that, then we will have the public hearing, and we'll open the public hearing at 7:32. And I assume we have nothing, Kevin? Okay. Let's give it about 5 minutes. We'll close the public hearing at 7:33. And councilors, do you have any questions regarding this ordinance, which, as Jim explained, is essentially the ordinance to appropriate the funds from the previous ordinance? Hearing none, do I have a motion for ordinance 2328?
Motion to approve ordinance 2328.
Have a second?
Second.
Motion made to approve by Councilor McCarthy, seconded by Councilor Spaljerik. Arlo, would you please call the roll?
Cindy Spaljerik.
Yes.
Jake Gilbert.
Yes.
Troy Patton.
No.
Scott Willis.
Yes.
Victor McCarty.
Yes.
Mike Johns.
Yes.
Scott Fry.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-1.
Thank you.
Our next item is ordinance 2326, which is our 2024 budget. This item had a council introduction on August 28th. A public hearing followed on October 9th, and we are up for adoption consideration this evening. John Rogers, could you give us an overview of the budget, please?
Hey, John, let me take this one because I owe a follow-up explanation to a couple of the counselors anyway.
Okay,
so.
all yours.
Yeah, so first off, let me apologize to Counselor Patton and John. So we decided not to roll in the $6 million from the infrastructure GO bond into this budget. We're just going to tackle that with that whole 10-year infrastructure plan we're working on. And if we have to appropriate money from the operational budget, next year we'll do so. So what this budget includes, basically, we're not touching, from the original presentation, we're not touching public safety. And they will get that 4% annual increase. All the other departments, we're showing a 2% increase in the budget and a 3% increase in their in a bucket for salary increases to be used at the discretion of the department heads. And beyond that, I think we've accommodated. We cut Grand Park down. Troy, you and I walked through that. We cut that down to a 6-month budget in anticipation of something happening with Grand Park next year. And I think other than that, we've accomplished everything you guys have asked us to do. Am I missing something, John, or anybody else think anything I'm missing?
No.
Okay.
Any questions, councilors?
I only have two questions. Number one, I still think, and this goes to probably Joel or whomever, but I do think that the police department needs to take the vehicles and actually sell the vehicles as opposed to trade them in. I ran every single one of those vehicles. I don't know the shape they're in, but if, just in general shape, I mean, it's $100,000. I mean, literally, I might even be interested in buying those vehicles because I could make $100,000 literally, even selling them in the bottom quartile of every vehicle that's for sale or to be traded in to be able to get that money. And I'm not saying that that's Joel's job because that's not what they're paid to do, but somebody in the city should be taking those vehicles and selling them. The website that Jeremy gave me was, I think, created by like a fifth grader. I mean, that's not a sales site. I mean, look at Auto Trader, look at some of the other places where there are actual government vehicles being sold, and the vehicles are actually being sold at, in some cases, some of those vehicles were 150% of the value that we're getting in a trade-in. So I'm just saying, I even joked with Scott Fry last night. I said, heck, I'd buy those cars and make an easy $50,000. I can just liquidate them and make $50,000 and pay for a year of my kid's college. You know, I mean, it's literally, they're that low. And then the other thing I just want to say, and I'm still not convinced on this. If we're giving people raises, it kind of defeats the purpose, you know, when we say, okay, everybody's going to get a 3% cost of living adjustment raise. And then in September, we give them a $10,000 raise. And then we give them 3% on top of that. That makes no sense to me. It also makes no sense to me that, hey, when department heads say, well, we have extra money in the budget, so we're going to bonus out our people and give them additional raises and then give them 3% on top of that. I mean, that's not in the spirit of, you know, giving people raises. So anyways, that's the only thing.
Well, as far as giving people raises, Mr. Patton, for many years, we've fought the government tradition of paying people based on how long they've been here. And that is why we go to paying in a merit basis. And you can do cost of living, you can do merit, and you can pay for how long you've been here. And we have chosen not to do the latter. And it is up to the department heads to assess their people. And if that person is not performing well, he will not receive a merit, but he is eligible for a cost of living. And that is how we must function to remain competitive in the employment world. And it gets harder and harder all the time. Starting with public safety, moving on to public works, and then most all of the rest of our other areas. We have a hard time bringing people into the city even in this environment today. So the whole structure is about rewarding those that produce and being able to market to keep our good people.
In terms of the vehicles, we've got that for action, Troy. We're going to certainly look at that. I mean, the time you sell it, you know that. I mean, used car market could go up or down, but we're going to look at that. I've talked to Danielle about it, and at the time we sell those, we'll be looking at that option. I can't promise we'll go down that road. I just don't know what the numbers
Yeah, it's fair enough.
Would it be possible if I chimed in on the vehicles for just one moment? At your request, I did look up the statute, and it requires that if vehicles are painted in two-tone paint, all the logos have to be removed and the vehicles have to be one color. So I don't know how many cars that affects, but it would mean that perhaps we have to repaint them before they can go to market. Yeah. And then there were some other technicalities that are maybe outside of what we all would consider if we were just to sell outright our own vehicles, just so you know that. But I did.
Yeah, so a guy up in Fort Wayne told me that also, and there's a group up in Elkhart that'll do it for $500 per vehicle.
Yeah, it affects every police car.
Yeah.
You have to essentially de-police it. So
Yeah.
you can't go around pretending to be.
Yeah, right, yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot of, they have these basically spray booths, you know? I mean, that, these guys, they do lots of these, and I mean, they'll strip them down, paint them, and move them out, so.
Scott, I'm sorry, I was listening, but when the 6 million in the infrastructure, can you just go through that one more time?
Yeah, no worries. Rather than put it back into the budget, which I had talked to Troy and Mike about, I'm sorry, Counselor Patton and Counselor Johns about, I just decided, we're working through that infrastructure plan over the next 10 years, and we're getting close. We'll have it done by January. We're going to roll it out in the first meeting. But we're going to address the costs of those projects that were pulled into that GEO bond in our infrastructure strategy. So it will get addressed just in a different way. And it could come back, we may identify that those projects are paid out of the general budget, which this money, this $6 million that we're not budgeting for, will roll into. So we may end up paying for it out of the operating funds, we just don't know yet.
John Rogers, I had a question about, not specifically about this budget. I appreciate all your hard work on this one. Last year, when we looked at the budget, we also had looked at the non-DLGF funds. Okay. Would it be possible, and I don't want to hold this up tonight, we need to vote on this, would it be possible to come back to us that first meeting in November with the information on the non-DLGF full total budget?
Yeah, Counselor Johns, the non-DLGF funds, we will be looking at those after tonight, or once we have some direction on where this budget's going. And I'd like to meet with the RDC, because that's the majority of those non-DLGF funds, to have that conversation. So it might be a little later in the year rather than the next meeting.
So you're thinking if we have a second meeting in November, would you be prepared at that point? Or should we target the first meeting in December?
I would prefer that that's the case, yes.
Okay.
At this point, yes.
Okay, excellent.
Okay?
Thank you. Any other questions, comments on the budget? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve ordinance 2326, 2024 budget?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
The motion for approval of ordinance 2326 was made by Councilor Willis, seconded by Councilor McCarty. Marla, would you call the roll, please?
Scott Fry,
Yes.
Cindy Spilgerik,
Yes.
Jake Gilbert,
Yes.
Troy Patton,
Yes.
Scott Willis,
Yes.
Victor McCarty,
Yes.
Mike Johns.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you.
And then, John, we will come back and we'll expect a report on the non-DLGF items on the first meeting in December. Thank you.
I wrote it down.
Next item this evening is ordinance 23-29, the 2024 elected official salary. This item had a council introduction on October 9th. It is up for adoption consideration this evening. Marla, could you explain this, please?
Yes, Marla Ayler for the record from the Clerk Treasurer's Office. As you noted, this item was introduced at your October 9th meeting, and it's presented for your approval tonight. While individual counselors' salaries actually remain the same, they appear different from the first iteration due to, originally I broke down the entire budget. We have since decreased and divided it out, so future council will be paid the same as this council. Yeah, hopefully that makes sense. If it doesn't, please let me know. And then based on conversation with President Johns, the president's salary will go from $1,500 to $2,500 annually and eliminates the role of council vice president, but does align with Indiana code. Do you have any questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
Is that all right? We're good? Okay. So, when this was introduced, it was my understanding that the only change was the city council, and that was because the number didn't match what was budgeted. So we had to make an adjustment. You were going to make an adjustment to the salary. Instead, you were instructed to make an adjustment, even though it was a very minor adjustment,
Correct.
make the adjustment to the budget.
Yes.
And I see that that's happened.
Yes.
Maybe I didn't understand, or maybe I didn't communicate clearly. I'm not sure which. But going back and looking at the numbers, these numbers that we're presented with today are smaller for the mayor and the clerk treasurer's office than what they were originally presented.
Yes?
It was my understanding that those were presented, and again, I didn't have the numbers in front of me at that point in time to do the comparison, that there was no change in those, and in fact, the only change as it was presented was the city council for the reasons that we've just discussed.
So the question was, from the last meeting, were the numbers presented the exact same numbers from the 2023 budget to the 2024 budget? The answer is yes. In 2023, the budget was presented at 109. Based on directives that we had received, I did adjust those numbers from 4% to 3%, which is why they're lower today than originally presented.
Now, I looked up just a little bit ago, looked up the 2023 elected official salary ordinance. And I'm showing what was approved then, which was no increase, if I recall correctly, no increase from 2022, which is the way it should be, in my opinion. What we approved then was 123,723 for the mayor and 105,560 for the clerk treasurer. So it in fact appears, even though the number that's in front of us today for those two offices is less than what was initially presented, it's still higher. It's still an increase from what was approved in 2023.
It is not, it is an increase based on salary ordinance. It was, that question had never been posed. It was an increase, not an increase based on what had previously been asked for in the budgets.
So is the number larger either today or as it was introduced at our last meeting? Is the number larger, equal to, or smaller than what was approved in 2023?
I believe you just asked me more than one question. It is more than what was approved in last year's 2023 salary ordinance.
Okay.
It is less than what was presented in the 2024 salary ordinance 2 weeks ago. It is, the budgets were the same initially presented in 2024 as they were presented in 2023.
They're higher than 2023.
Not in the budget presentations.
But what we're getting ready to approve is higher.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, okay, I'm a no.
Yeah, I'm a no also. I mean, I think we all agreed it would be the same as it was.
That was certainly the intent, unless I'm just really, really bad at communicating or understanding.
Right, right.
Maybe both.
Let's ask your wife.
Well, I think at introduction, I mean, just in case anyone's confused, I mean, we were pretty, the message was we did not want it as it was introduced, and we wanted, in fact, the exact same as what it was for the 2023 salary ordinance.
I'm sorry, that wasn't clear, because I thought when I presented it, I was really clear about what I had said.
I'll take the blame for that. That's my fault. I didn't communicate that clearly. I apologize.
So can you just, I think for the record, say exactly the figures you'd like on the 2023 elected salary ordinance, or when someone makes a motion, you can amend it to say that?
Yeah, you can amend it, or you don't have to pass it tonight. This is not due until
We just don't.
Yeah,
if
so
we
I just don't want to
if we
vote
just
an
vote
increase
no,
for an elected official. That just doesn't,
it-
I don't want to take more taxpayer
sure.
dollars, even though it's small dollars.
Sure. Yeah, so you can either move for an amended amount, or you can wait until next meeting, because we have until the 31st to submit this.
With
Can we just
all the
shelve it until next meeting, make sure we get the numbers right?
That's completely
Let's just
within the
shelve
timeline.
Mike, do we need to vote on that, or?
So here's what I would recommend.
Just motion to table until the next meeting, if that's what you're wanting, Counselor Wills.
Okay,
I would recommend that we have no increase for elected official salary, no increase, whether we're talking about a budget increase or an ordinance increase, a cost of living increase, whatever it is, zero increase.
Zero. I agree.
And we vote on it and be done with it right now.
Yeah, yeah, let's just vote no right now, and then it's done.
Well, we would
It
table
reverts back to
this.
last year's.
But we would table this and approve it correctly next
Yeah.
meeting. Is that the
The
best way to
elected
handle
official
it?
salary does not have to be approved tonight, if that's accurate, Counselor?
I'll go
Yes?
ahead and make a motion. I make a motion that we shelf this, and Marla, if you would go back and make these numbers look exactly the same as they did last year, that would be my motion. Shelf it until next meeting for a vote.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that, that's fine.
Okay. Motion made by Counselor Willis, seconded by Counselor Patton to have Marla go back and make the changes. And we're going to shelve it this evening and bring it back at the next meeting. Would you please call the roll?
Absolutely. Mike Johns?
Yes.
Scott Fry?
Yes.
Cindy Spilgerik?
Yes.
Scott Willis?
Yes.
Victor McCarty?
Yes.
Jake Gilbert?
Yes.
Troy Patton?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Our next item for consideration is ordinance 23-30, additional appropriation for the 2022 GO bond. This item had a council introduction on October 9th, and we will have a public hearing this evening. Marla, do you want to give us an overview of this before the public hearing, please?
Sure thing. The appropriation of the proceeds of the general obligation bonds of 2022 were unanimously approved by council on October 24th, 2022 for $5.815 million, as was detailed in the 2023, as was detailed in that ordinance. The ordinance, however, do not contain the breakdown of the appropriations, but rather they note the projects which are then discussed during the council meetings. Typically, the clerk treasurer's office is contacted by administration and presented with the exact figures to record in NAV for tracking purposes and used throughout the budget year. In this case, however, things just weren't typical. We did make sure to include P&I payments, which were budgeted out of Fund 353 by the clerk treasurer's staff, while the specific allocations would have been recorded by us in Fund 352 after receiving said directive. In other words, while the proceeds were received and are being spent, they had not been entered into NAV. Council can consider this a housekeeping item, as this ordinance will ratify the expenditures made in 2023. To date, $733,722 was spent by the fire department for a new engine, and $139,047.89 has additionally been spent for construction design services pertaining to the Cherry Street Bridge and the 181st Street and Wheeler Roundabout, all of which are mentioned in the bond ordinance. $4,897,923.11 remain. These are non-DLGF funds. However, we will reach out to notify them of the corrective action which the additional appropriation requires by law. Thanks to Mr. Lawler and Mr. Hersig for helping rectify this situation, and the clerk treasurer's office would appreciate council's approval of this ordinance and ask that you instruct administration to detail the balance of the appropriations in order that we might properly detail the budget for tracking purposes.
Thank you, Marla. Okay, as this is a additional appropriation, does require a public hearing, so I'll open the public hearing at 7:53. Kevin, we have no cards, comments. We'll close the public hearing at 7:54. Have any councilor comments or questions? If not, do I have a motion to approve ordinance 2330?
Motion to approve.
Have a second?
I'll second it.
Motion made to approve by Counselor Patton, seconded by Counselor Fry. Marla, would you call the roll, please?
Troy Patton?
Yes.
Scott Willis?
Yes.
Victor McCarty?
Yes.
Mike Johns?
Yes.
Scott Fry?
Yes.
Cindy Spilgerik?
Yes.
Jake Gilbert?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries 7-0.
Good deal. Next item, ordinance 2331, our updated traffic ordinance. This item had a council introduction on October 9th, is up for adoption consideration this evening, and I think Jonathan Nail is going to take the floor.
Thank you, Counselor. For the record, John Nail, Director of Public Works, City of Westfield. As I mentioned in the introduction, this is the annual update to our traffic ordinance. This traffic ordinance is what makes our regulations like speed limits and stop signs enforceable for our police department. We update this every year to include new public streets that have come online in new residential subdivisions or roadway extensions. The update this year includes, as I said, new public streets. We did an audit of intersections for spelling, as well as some other previous errors that hadn't been caught. We updated for any new roundabouts or road changes on our public network. We removed the 20-minute parking on Park Street based on feedback from businesses on that street that was left over from a COVID policy when there was a lot more business doing carry-out type options during that time. And then we did reduce the 203rd Street speed limit from 30 down to 25 upon request from a resident, as well as Westfield Boulevard or Union Street from 40 to 35 based on an updated speed study. I do want to point out, Councilor Spoljaric had mentioned 3 streets in Countryside that there were some concerns about widths and parking regulations on those 3 streets. Councilor Spoljaric got me the names of those. We did take a look. They are candidates for restricted parking on one side based on the width. However, it's not included in this current ordinance. The reason being, I wanted to have an opportunity to talk with HOA and residents before we make that change, mainly to get some feedback from them on how they utilize those streets and to make a decision on which side of the street to restrict parking would be better for everyone. So just wanted to have an opportunity to talk with those folks before we make that change. Once we have those conversations, I could easily bring back another update to the traffic ordinance, or we could give them a 1-year period before we implement the regulations. Certainly interested in hearing any feedback on that from Councilor Spoljaric. With that said, any questions? I'm happy to answer.
Councilors?
I would be, as I live in Countryside, so I would be very supportive of what you just said in terms of that feedback from Councilor Spoljaric. I think that would be, so I understand the timetable. I'm not going to be here. I would love for the city to proceed with that.
Yeah, and the streets that were in question are Plainville, Palmyra, and Danborn. It's oftentimes when we do a traffic restriction on one side of the street, it's a new street. And so the residents have new houses and they don't know any different from being allowed to only park on one side. In this case, because there's been several years of parking allowed on both sides of the street, I think it's important to have some public outreach and talk through the situation with residents.
Do I have a motion to approve ordinance 23-31?
So moved?
Second.
Motion made by Councilor Willis, seconded by Councilor Patton. Myla, would you call the roll, please?
Scott Willis?
Yes.
Victor McCarty?
Yes.
Mike Johns?
Yes.
Scott Fry?
Yes.
Cindy Spoljaric?
Yes.
Jake Gilbert?
Yes.
Troy Patton?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Moving on then to new business. Our first item, ordinance 23-32, amending the American Rescue Plan Act of the City of Westfield. This item has a council introduction this evening, and it will be up for adoption consideration on November 13th. I'm going to ask that Councilor Spoljaric explain this ordinance.
I will try and be quick about it. We have done this before. Every time we change or refine our spending for our the ARPA-related funds that we've received, we come in and update the plan in order to be able to do that. Our committee has met. If you recall, I mentioned that the Treasury changed the guidance in terms of how much we need to hold in reserve for audit. And so that was a significant portion, being they originally said 10%. And so that left us almost $1 million when you look at it, that could be available to other projects. So given we've taken the standard revenue loss and we are using ours in the standard format, if you will, we can use it on darn near any government service. And knowing our infrastructure needs, our committee decided that we thought those funds would best be used in the Public Works Department to, I guess, aid in whatever form that John Nail and team can figure out to best use those to get some projects started, whether it be engineering or actual construction, however they're going to figure out best to use that. So this plan, this amended plan lays that out, as well as has the language for the YMCA pledge. That's pretty much it right now, unless you want to add anything, Scott or Troy.
No, you summarized it well.
It's good. You did a good job on all that. You really did. All the heavy lifting, for sure.
Thanks, we had help. We had legal help.
Thank you, Cindy. Thank you. All right, then we'll return to this ordinance for adoption consideration in November. Our next item, a new business, ordinance 2333, second-class city. This item has a council introduction this evening and will be up for adoption consideration in November, on November 13th. And we're going to ask Councilor Patton to describe this ordinance.
I think everybody knows what it is. I mean, so I think, you know, I've spoke to Scott Willis about this. I've spoke to a couple people on this. I do think with the change of the guard and with the idea that we're going to see, frankly, a different maybe way of governing. And I think one of the big drawbacks, I'm passing it the last time, just to be frank, was to ensure that we had a new administration taking over. And just to be fair about it, and that's going to happen. And so at this point, and as I said before, I said, look, if I was mayor, I would want my own financial people in charge, and I'd want that ability to make decisions based on that. The other thing I would encourage you to do, and I know we said this, is to go through and redo the way we do the budget. Do a zero-based budget, start from the ground up, and build the budget. That's the way it should be done. That's the way corporations do it. But we've never done it that way here in Westfield. And the way we've done the budget is actually, it's poor, to be quite fair. And so with that being said, I am personally for the second-class city, knowing that we're going to have a new administration. And
Well, looking forward to bringing this to adoption consideration at our next meeting. I would only add to it that I'm definitely in favor of it also. I think by making the move now, it gives the new mayor a chance to have 4 years to put together a very thoughtful plan process for making that change. There's nothing to be rushed here. It also gives the clerk treasurer's office a chance to participate in that change, I would hope, realizing that they will have changes into that position because of this new ordinance. So I encourage both the new mayor and the new clerk to work together to make it as seamless and as beneficial a process as possible.
I just had 2 quick questions, mainly for Manny. One, I support it, so thank you for bringing it forward. First, does there have to be any language, and I may have missed it, about adding an additional at-large seat in there? I know that the 6 common districts, but I didn't know if there needed to be any language about adding additional at-large for there to be a total of 3. And then 2, do we have to have a public hearing on this one? Because I just noticed it.
Yeah, I'll take them in reverse. Public hearing, no. There's no statutory requirement for a public hearing. You can certainly add one at your choice. As for the first question, it's been a while since I looked at it. Whatever the requirement that's lower down, Kevin, if you wouldn't mind, about the additional seats, it should be in there. If it's not, Councilman McCarty, I'll take a look before the next meeting and certainly add that language. Yeah, it's in there. I can put a finer point on it
I think it's inherent.
to give you the number, if you'd like. That's totally fine.
Any other questions, comments?
In the statute, it already says that, but I mean.
Okay, we look forward to seeing that ordinance back on the docket at our first meeting in November. Our last item then is a supplemental amendment to agreement for professional services relating to opioid settlements. And Manny, can you address this one?
Yes, sir, I can take that. It's as easy as it looks on there. Initially, when the city entered into an agreement to hire a number of outside counsel to pursue the opioid litigation some years ago, the standard contingency fee, like it almost is in every case, is 33 1/3%. Since then, Indiana legislature passed a statute that has reduced that amount to 8.7%. And so this effectuates an amendment to that original agreement, taking the city's obligation from 33 1/3% to 8.7%.
Thank you. And this requires a signature by whom, Manny?
Yeah, so it would be, if you pass it, it would be signed by the mayor.
It mentions the agreement is attached, but it is not.
I don't know. Not my agreement. All of those, I have seen those agreements, all of those say 33 1/3%. So I'm
Well,
very
it says the parties then entered into the attached amendment to the agreement. And there's no actual amendment
that
in
amendment
this
was,
document.
yeah, that amendment was sent to Jeremy. He's on vacation, but if you want to pass it pending seeing that amendment, it says.
Oh, yeah, I don't want to pass
exactly
this
what that
without seeing what the
Well,
actual
I mean, it's up to me
amendment
to
is.
see and to approve what it says, right? It's up to you to pass the main obligation, the language I can approve or not approve. But certainly, if you pass it with that contingency, that it says it's going from 33 1/3 to 8.7, that is A-okay.
Pretty good, really.
Do we want? This is up for adoption consideration this evening, so do we want to pass it pending seeing it, or Councilor's thoughts?
I'm good with it. I mean, I'm good with the 8.7, so lower than normal.
Cindy, do you want the contingency or?
We can wait too, it doesn't matter.
Well, no, I mean, I just didn't know if there was anything else in there. And again, because it's not in front of us, I don't know exactly
No, that's
if
what
it
I mean.
affects something else.
Pass it pending my review that there's nothing else in there. My confirmation, I'll email the whole team that that's the only change. Obviously, I wouldn't have the mayor sign it without that.
Is it like a blanket engagement letter or
Yeah,
something? or-
exactly. Because it has to comply, we have to pass it by a certain point to comply with Indiana law.
Yeah.
So I don't want to, I'd rather not wait if that's the question being asked.
Can I have a motion then, please?
Do you want to wait, Cindy, or no?
I just feel better about waiting,
Okay.
just so I can know
No
what
problem.
I'm agreeing to.
I say we just table it till next time.
Manny, what's the time constraint on it?
Let me pull up my email. Give me a minute. We'll say this, I don't think there is any other agreement. I think this is it. There's the prior, so let me just make sure I understand the question. Are you asking for what the supplemental agreement means or what the initial agreement said?
The
Because
amendment to
this
the
is the
agreement.
supplemental.
The amendment to the
Yeah,
agreement.
this is it. If you scroll down, Kevin, it has the law firm's name on there. They have to sign the same thing. There's nothing else attached. If you want to see the first agreement, that's fine. Somebody could dig that up, I think, but this is the amendment.
So I think in the third line, I think the question is, it says the parties then entered into the attached amendment to the agreement. The attached is this itself, there is nothing further?
This is the attachment.
says supplemental amendment to agreement.
Yeah, the original agreement was giant. The parties that entered into the attached amendment to the agreement which reduced the payment contingency fees. Yeah, I don't remember seeing it. I can check with Jeremy, but this is the operative. This is what's going to be sent back to them, and that they have to sign and send back to us to make it 8.7%.
What can we put in the language, Cindy, to make you feel comfortable to vote for it tonight? Give us, within 24 hours, Manny provides whatever other documentation he has, and we have 24 hours to respond to that, or?
I guess just subject to acceptable review by city legal.
Perfect.
There you go.
I'll do it tomorrow.
Let's do that.
Perfect.
Could you send us an email to close that loop, Manny?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Cindy, I appreciate that.
Okay, then can I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Subject to the
Yeah. subject to the
review
of
of the city legal.
Okay, motion has been made by Counselor Patton, seconded, I think, by Counselor Willis, to approve this, subject to legal review and approval. Marla, would you call the roll, please?
Scott Fry,
Yes.
Cindy Spilgerich,
Yes.
Jake Gilbert,
Yes.
Troy Patton,
Yes.
Scott Willis,
Yes.
Victor McCarty,
Yes.
Mike Johns.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Good catch, Cindy. Good catch. Do we have any guests who wish to address the council this evening? Kevin, any cards? None, okay. Do we have clerk treasurer comments this evening?
We have just a few. I wanted to let you know that I presented the first ever investment report on behalf of the Clerk Treasurer's Office to the Redevelopment Commission this month on October 16th. Our recent investments of RDC monies have earned $148,000 in interest, a little bit more than that, and their current cash on hand is $15.7 million. The transfers of the surplus proceeds from the 2016 and 2017 GO bonds was made after your approval last meeting. Those balances, for the record, were corrected. They were correct in the resolution, not based on what I said, so I apologize there. But they did come to $5,983.22. And the clerk treasurer has established the following cutoff date for all invoices to be paid in 2023, which will be December 20th, 2023 at noon, please. Of course, we'll be sending out an email, but wanted to let you know we decided that today. And that's it.
Thank you.
Good job.
Councilor comments?
Like last time, I just have a couple shout outs. The night after my first council meeting, I did another ride along with the police department. I posted this on my page, but I just want to make sure I told this story here. Special shout out to Night Shift B. It was seen that a mother in our community posted that her presents for her children were stolen, and then they were returned, but all of the toys, they were the exact same toys, but different toys that were already broken. So a very poor thing to do, and Night Shift B saw this, and they rallied some funds together to give to the mother to give her kids a good birthday present, as well as our friends at Charleston gave them a gift card to have a nice birthday dinner as well. So that was a fantastic notion by our police department. And then two, of course, want to shout out to Westfield Welcome for this past weekend, having second annual pumpkin function, which to me, it looked like we had double the attendees as we did last year, so fantastic. And then this Friday night is our now second annual trick-or-treating, which last year just blew all expectations away. So really looking forward to that on Friday. And also, one last shout out forward to on Friday night is Coach down there. Got a big game coming up, so hopefully we can make it 2 years in a row against Carmel.
Go Rocks.
Go Rocks. Any other comments, councilors? I'd like to welcome Mayor Cook back. It's good to see you back. It's good to see you healthy again. All right, so we missed you. Mayor Cook, comments?
Just glad to be back.
We're glad to have you back. With that, then we'll close our meeting at 8:15. Thank you.
Mike, you didn't have any good evening.
Are we supposed to